I also think it's about finding the right partners, right? So we met with many stores who ummed and ahed and they weren't sure. And for us, they're not the right partner then. We were looking for partners who believed in what we were doing so that they would take it on with as much enthusiasm as we were, right? If you're finding a business who we're going to partner with who is more old school, isn't very digital savvy, and we're like, oh, maybe, I'm not sure. The reality is they're probably going to look for every negative a few weeks or a few months in, rather than focusing on the positives or focusing on how they can contribute to make it better. So we try to find the right partners in terms of that fit too.
Hey, what's up everybody, Sanbonani. My name is Thabo Moloi. Welcome to the Ebozi Show, where we sit down with real industry trailblazers to unlock insights, wisdoms, and knowledge to help take your career to the next level, help you build and grow your businesses in a way that is revolutionary. I'm so excited with today's guest, a guy that I admire, that I've looked up to for the longest time, who's just an all-round superstar. He's got a business science marketing honors degree from the University of Cape Town. Started his career at the global consumer goods company Unilever, where he got some international exposure and experience being the global assistant brand manager on Vaseline before becoming the brand manager on Axe, Brute, and Impulse. And his career continued to soar, where he'd eventually become the industry manager for branding at Google. And one day when he was at a braai with a few mates, he encountered an opportunity for an app, and he turned this opportunity into a business called Bottles, the alcohol delivery app. And it has grown from humble beginnings to servicing almost 4 cities and surrounding areas now, including Pretoria, Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. He has been featured on Sunday Times, on Venture Burn, on Disrupt Africa, on Business Tech. And in 2016, they appeared with his partner on Mnet's Shark Tank, where they secured an investment of 500,000 Rand from Gil Ovid. So guys, put your hands together. If you're watching this at home, make sure you grab a notebook and a pen. You're gonna want to take notes. We are blessed to have the one and only co-founder and co-CEO of Bottles app, Vincent Viviers. Vince?
Thank you very much for having me. You make a great hype man.
Thank you. A lot of people have told me that they say that, look, I should get in contact with a few musicians, and if this thing doesn't work out, become a hype man full time. But you make being a hype man so easy, you know.
Thank you.
Having such a depth and breadth of pedigree. But I'm curious, man. You had what looks like a great marketing career. You know, you could be someone who could be a captain of industry at any big organization, you know, but you've taken the plunge now for a couple of years where you're running your own business. I just want to know, in terms of the preparation for that, knowing that you could make it in the corporate world and climb the proverbial corporate ladder, how do you then prepare yourself to take the plunge and run your own business?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very scary thing, right? I remember always having this itch, this desire to want to start my own business, but kind of naively so. Okay. I hadn't really, before you've done it, you don't really know, and people tell you all these cliche sayings, and it's funny how true most of those come to be. But it was a scary thing, and I think for me, I had a lot to risk. I had a stable career and a stable income and people I need to support. So to then want to do my own business meant a risk for me. So it was a scary thing, but I think it was a very rewarding thing. When you're working in corporates, as much as you can put 100% into what you're doing, it's a different experience when it's your own business. It makes it a lot harder to switch off. It's like you can't leave your job at 4:30 and come home, right? Your job is always on. But I think it was the right choice and it was the right time for me to do it.
And is it something that you've always known that one day you're going to do? Or was it something like a complete chance that happened by happenstance, that, hey, opportunity arose and why not?
I think it wasn't something I always wanted to do. I think working at Unilever and being exposed to some entrepreneurs that I was working with in the agencies kind of inspired me and made me think outside of the box to go, do I want to be in corporate for the rest of my life? And once you have that, I think it's very hard it's very hard to switch it off. And unless you actually try and go down that path, you're always going to wonder what if. So I didn't want to be wondering what if. I wanted to actually let me get out there and try. So we spent a lot of time kind of thinking of ideas of what businesses we can do before before I found one that I was confident enough in that it could be a success, that it was worth risking everything for.
Really? And what is the process for that? Because a lot of people feel like they can become entrepreneurs. They feel like they have this savviness to become business owners, but they can't crack the idea. How did you get to the idea that really works for you?
So look, we threw a lot of ideas around. I think at the time we were thinking about it's a digital world, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to do something that was more tech or digital based. Not specifically an app, but I think an online business, or a business that focused online at least. So we were throwing a lot of ideas around. We actually came across an app called Vivino, which is it's a social media for wine basically. You can you can scan the label of your wine bottle. It tells you all different details about the wine, where it's from, customer reviews. But you couldn't place an order, right? And that was the kind of first insight we had. It was like, oh, maybe ordering wine online would be something.
Yeah.
And then we were at a braai and we ran out of drinks. Yeah. And that's when the kind of unlocked the idea of like, wait, we've been drinking, we can't go to the bottle store now, but wouldn't it be great to get not just wine, all drinks delivered to where you are now?
Sure.
We did some research and we found that this was an idea that already was happening in the US, which gave us a blueprint for how the business model could work, right?
Yes.
Which I think made it a lot easier. I think it's very hard for entrepreneurs if you're going to try and do something that's brand new, that's never been done anywhere, to try and figure it all out on your own is difficult, right? So we had a blueprint to work with, which was great. But I think one important thing I'd always say is ideas are actually worthless.
Exactly.
And it's funny to say that, but our idea is not unique, right? People in America, Australia, all over the world are doing it. I know, I see on our ads on social media all the time, people are writing, oh, they stole our idea. Everyone's had an idea for an alcohol delivery app, right?
Yeah.
Ideas are worthless. The reality is execution is everything.
100%.
Now
you're preaching the gospel, because a lot of people feel like they have to come up with this mind-blowingly novel idea that no one has thought of, and that's the only way to be successful. The reality is, novelty of ideas really lacking, It's the execution and starting on a small scale. You guys bootstrapped in the beginning, where a lot of people feel like they have to get an idea and then immediately search for funding. For you guys, how did you come to the decision to say, you know what, let's see how much of our own resource and backing we can put into this thing before we can search other people to come fund us?
So look, I think we were lucky in that we had some great mentors, and those mentors kind of drove us in those early days.
Okay.
We were quite naive too to think, hey, we've got a great idea, let's take it to some people we know and see if we can get funding. And their feedback to us was, you need to prove the concept before you raise money, right? And we came across the idea of a minimum viable product.
Yes.
I think we even did more than what was necessary for a minimum viable product. We went and built an app, and it took us 13 months.
Sure.
There were multiple stops along the way where we were like, have we gone from zero to hero too quickly? Is this even going to work? So if there's one thing I'd say is there's much simpler ways to do things in a minimum viable product. You can just do a landing page with a concept and idea and put a couple $100 behind it on digital media to try and figure out, is this something people want? And from there, just build on it incrementally is the way you should go.
Yeah, because a lot of people, because we work with a lot of entrepreneurs in the township, right? And we get people who have these grand visions, and it's great. You gotta have a big ambition that you're striving for. But the most important thing is knowing how to get there, and at least taking the time to learn how other people have got there. So I love the fact that you guys, reached out to mentors, because mentorship in business is extremely important.
Yeah.
And what's interesting when I look at your journey is you've never worked in isolation. Even your business is co-founded and co-run.
Yeah.
So it's quite rare where you get, co-founders who are running businesses together. What led to that decision to say, let's start this thing together and actually run it together?
So myself and my co-founder Enrico, we met at Unilever. We were working together on Axe.
Yeah.
And we became close friends. And it's funny, people tell you don't make friendship in business. For us, it's worked really, really well. I think we've been able to have a strong friendship, but a strong business partnership where we can be completely honest with each other and push each other to achieve great things together. For me, it's one of the key insights for entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is very hard.
Yeah.
Doing it alone, I envy no one who does it alone. It's such a hard thing to do. There are times when you're constantly just hitting brick walls and you feel like nothing's working and like, is it worth it all? And having a partner in those moments who can pick you up when you're down and vice versa, you can pick him up when he's down, I think is really important.
Sure.
It's been a key for our success.
Yeah.
So yeah, we met at Unilever and we worked really well together there. And from day one, we decided we wanted to do something together.
Really?
I wouldn't take it back for anything.
Sure, that's amazing. And having built great careers in marketing, how important do you think it is for entrepreneurs to have an understanding, or even if it's just a basic appreciation of marketing, of branding, when starting and building their own business?
Look, I think it is very important. I think even just the founding in some working experience in a business where you have the structured approach and thinking to problem solving is really important, because that's the reality. Entrepreneurship it's such a wide range of things you're doing, from even just registering a business with the CIPC to figuring out writing a business plan, the first steps you take. If you can't use a structured approach or way of doing it, you kind of get lost and you don't know what you're doing. So I think that's really, really important. I do think, though, there's a lot of resources nowadays that make it a lot more accessible for people who haven't had the experience or studied it, to be honest. I mean, you can go online and do multiple courses for free on Google AdWords or Google Ads now, on Facebook and Instagram media, and teach yourself. If you have access to internet, you can have access to the world's information, which 100%. You can teach yourself very quickly how to do these things. And that's kind of something that, all my digital media that I'm is self-taught, right?
Sure.
Taught myself how to do Facebook ads, taught myself how to do Google ads. And I think those were the most empowering things, because it makes, suddenly you can start a business and promote it very easily, very cheaply, very quickly, to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
And you have such a freedom of scope in terms of applying yourself, right? Like, for example, similar to you, in terms of production, putting together videos, creating content, branding it, putting it online, spend some hours and hours and hours learning, and just the freedom that it gives you to say, I can actually create something out of this. Whether it's content to, inspire, motivate, help other people, or whether it's building a business, the idea of embracing a learning culture and always be learning, all right? And you're in a space that, you're at the forefront of tech, running an app-based business, and it's a world that's constantly evolving. So I can imagine, you have to learn quite a lot of things every single day and continue to learn that. You know? How do you build that within yourself and within your team to ensure that you're always at the forefront of what's happening in the digital world, and ensuring that you're always learning to stay abreast of where the world is headed?
I think I was quite fortunate to work at some companies like Unilever and Google, which both within those companies, they have a big focus on training and teaching their employees, but also exposing them to a lot of what's happening in the world. I'll give you an example. At Google, they have what they call TGIF, which used to be Thank Google It's Friday. They then moved it to Thursday because no one wanted to stay for after work drinks on Friday in America.
Really?
So it became the Thursday Google Information Forum. And what it was Larry and Sergey standing in front of the business, talking about what's happening in their business, right? Which I thought was very interesting. And they'd bring different people on to talk about different things Google are focusing on. In my role, I had nothing to do with Google Home or artificial intelligence, but every Friday or Thursday, I could get exposed to what Google was doing in those areas, right? And it was very inspiring for me. I think in our business, in our industry, we try to do the same thing. We try to take a broader look of what's happening in the entrepreneurial environment in South Africa, take a broader look at what's happening in the alcohol space, in the delivery space, and ensure our team are being exposed to those things too, to ensure they're learning and they can contribute to us more than just learn from us.
No, exactly. Because a lot of the time we take it for granted, the information we have around us in our immediate networks. We first want to go online, search things where actually if you ask someone right next to you around their insights, there's a lot that you can gather, so this learning culture, not just from online, but even from other people, I feel like it's so important, and it's helped me in my business as well. But you and Enrico, you both come from, strong brand marketing sort of backgrounds, when I engage with some entrepreneurs who have co-founded businesses, you get individuals from different sectors that sort of utilize their strengths. One may be a computer programmer, and one may be a sales guy, and they come together to sell software. But you guys coming from quite similar, backgrounds, what kind of challenges does that, pose, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Look, while we have very similar work experience,
Yeah.
I think our strengths are quite complementary. It's why our partnerships work very well. Enrico's got an amazing bias for action, and he executes far better than I do, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I'm more of an ideas guy, I'm more the
Yeah.
strategy and vision guy, he's more the executor, and bringing those two together is what I think makes our partnership work quite well.
Yeah.
If it was left to me, I would try and do the perfect thing and
Yeah.
take too long to do it and not start executing.
Yeah.
So he balances me well in that I try and envision what we should be doing,
Sure.
and in the meantime, he's hitting the ground running. So we have complementary strengths, and I
Yeah.
think that's key to what you find in a partner. If you're going to go into partnership with someone, you want to make sure that you have complementary strengths. You're not doing the same thing, because otherwise you need to add different things
Yeah.
to the relationship and to the business.
Yeah, that's a powerful self-awareness on your part, because we have weaknesses, right? But
Yeah,
it's very
of course.
difficult to admit, to say, that's a struggle when it comes to execution. And to admit that, but also find strength in other people is very, very important. And self-awareness for me is the ultimate sort of superhuman ability that you should inculcate if you want to drive businesses. Because the more you know about yourself, where your strengths are and where your
Yeah.
weaknesses are, the more you know where to go to build solutions that work. If you've got the strength, then hone in your strength. If your solution requires strength that you don't have, then reach out and find the people.
And the cliche thing everyone says, right? Surround yourself with people that are better than you.
Exactly.
Or that do things that you're not very strong at. So I think being self-aware and understanding where your strengths lie and where your weaknesses lie, and ensure you surround yourself with people that complement that,
Yeah.
means it's going to be the best for you in your business.
And be brave enough then to cut people or things that are not. Because a lot of the time, we get into situations where the group of people around us aren't helping us grow. They aren't helping us think sharper, they're not helping us, build our businesses, and it's quite a difficult thing. They often say, like, entrepreneurship is a very lonely road.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of friends you gotta say goodbye to. In your space, did you find that, or were you fortunate enough to have people around you all the time that are constantly pushing you?
I think for my own personal development, this is the one thing that I count myself very lucky on. When joining Unilever, I was part of a group of people that came from throughout South Africa together at Unilever, young, ambitious, like-minded people, and we created great friendships then and we stayed friends from then. And we constantly are pushing and driving each other and motivating each other in what we do. It's a group of friends that I'm still very good friends with. And on this journey, I guess I've lent on them a lot for support, for insights, for ideas, and I hope I do the same for them. Having that group of people around you that are pushing you to be better in life, in work, in your career, in everything, is invaluable. And I don't think a lot of people have that, to be honest. Finding that is amazing. If you can get that, you're very
because
fortunate.
it makes the road so much easier, where yes, it's lonely, but if you've got people that you can reach out to and say, I've got this idea, I'm doing this, can you help or can you point me in the right direction? It's absolutely key. And it speaks to networking, your ability to network and create those connections where you also add value, but at the same time, you can find value when you need it. And, in your business, you've got quite an extensive network. You've got partners that you need to rely on who you source the alcohol from. You've got drivers that need to deliver. There's a lot of moving parts. How do you manage that? How do you manage the complexity of having all these nodes connecting and all these relationships moving in different directions and making sure that, you don't lose the bigger picture and ensure the business runs efficiently? How do you keep it all together?
Look, I think you've got to be focused on what's really important, right?
Yeah.
I think we've had many opportunities arise and many offshoots for our current business model that we could explore. And every time we do that, it just becomes a distraction from being successful in the one thing we're doing well. We built our business as a piece of software that was supposed to connect a supply and demand, connect consumers to stores, and do a delivery service in 60 minutes. So we're trying to focus on doing that really, really well, right? So I think that's kind of key to it. Yeah.
And this razor sharp focus that you need to have. I mean, similarly in my space, I always get confronted with a whole host of questions. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And on the one part, you want to learn, right? So you want to be open to new opportunities. But at the same side, you believe so strongly in your idea and you don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's always been a challenge to me to say, how do I make sure that I keep this voice loud enough that it's like my guiding compass, but at the same time, I'm aware of these probing questions and these potential opportunities that I can explore down the line, you know?
I think that for me, the first thing, especially in the early stages, is do one thing, and do it really well.
Yeah.
If you try and do 5 things okay, you're not likely going to succeed because someone else could be doing any one of those things better than you. So focus on one thing and do it really well. It doesn't mean you can't do other things, but it means you need to become the best at doing one thing if your business is going to succeed. The second thing I'd say is you need to be able to fail fast, right? Because, and also at the same time, you need to be able to pivot. So if the one thing you're doing you think is the best thing, do it in a way that you can figure out if it's the best thing to be doing, and if not, fail fast rather and pivot to what could be successful. Otherwise, there's a balance between like the tenacity and self-belief that your idea is the right thing and going full on at it. But at some point it may not be working. You may need to pivot your business model. You want to do it sooner rather than later, I guess.
100%. But it's scary, like to develop that appetite for failure, even if it's like on a small scale, but have room in you to say, okay, things might go sour, all right? When they do go sour, what lessons do I quickly pick up and pivot from there is quite a challenge, and becomes even more of a challenge, you know, when you start growing in your business. Right? You mentioned off camera that you're now employing 18 people. So there's 18 people who directly or indirectly are relying on you to make decisions, all right? Any wrong decision, you know, 18 people could potentially lose their job, you know? Having that kind of, call it pressure, resting on your shoulders, how do you deal with that? And how do you ensure that you're still able to have the room in you to be brave enough to take decisions, even though they might result in failure?
Look, I think then I as an individual work very well under pressure. I think that's something that I've noticed. I thrive under pressure. I think most people who have the entrepreneurial spirit do. They seek out those pressure situations because it's when they can do some of their best work. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part is I have a desire to want to make a difference, right? And if I can start a business and employ people and give them jobs, that for me is rewarding. That's far more rewarding in what work I'm doing. In South Africa, we've got one of the highest levels of youth unemployment in the world. For me, the focus is on how can I be having a positive contribution to society. It does definitely add pressure to what you're doing, sure. But we thrive with it. We feed off it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I like that bigger vision, that mission, right? Yes, you have a vision, you know what you want to build and where you want to take it, but you've got a mission, you've got a why that is like an anchor. And the why becomes your motivator even in the tough times. You know, I can imagine there are days where things are not going okay, where it's one hurdle after the other, after the other, after the other. And in those moments, I found in my personal life that as long as you pay attention to the why, you can weather the storms, you know, because that becomes what tugs at you and keeps you going. But there are challenges, you know, and entrepreneurs in the early stages, we're quite optimistic. We feel like, man, we're going to change the world, we're going to shoot the lights out. And then 2-3 months down the line, boom, you know, in your story, and when you look back at how the Bottles app started, you know, what were some of the early challenges that you encountered, and how did you then, you know, find it within yourself to overcome those?
Yeah, look, entrepreneurship's a roller coaster, and to this very day still, there's daily ups and downs, daily walls that we hit, and I think a characteristic that every entrepreneur needs to have is tenacity. You need to have the ability to push through those walls, even when everything seems doomed. And we've had plenty along the way. When we first came up with the idea and we started developing our app, Our developers that we're working with told us it was going to take 3 months to get it to 95% completion, another 3 months to finish it, right? And key for us was we were first to market with this idea. It took us 13 months to get there. And during that time, we heard all sorts of rumors about big players like Uber Eats or Take-A-Lot who were going to do what we were doing. So at times we were like, have we done this wrong? And we've taken too long to develop our app. Our second big challenge was we had to find bottle stores who wanted to partner with us, right? Because we're a marketplace. We don't keep our own alcohol. We partner with existing stores and we connect customers and help them grow their sales. But when you don't have an app that's completed yet and you've got no track record of your business, you're meeting with stores and they're going, why should I trust you? What's the point? So we kept hitting walls. Every store we would present to, they would go, that's great guys, come back to me when you've got some sales to showcase it. So getting that first store was so difficult. And it's a bit demoralizing every time you go and people tell you, you guys look good and it's a nice idea, but I'm not sure. So getting that first store to say yes was a key milestone for us. And even the first store that said yes, once the app was ready, so they said yes about 3 months before we were ready to launch. As soon as the app was ready, they pulled out. And now we had an app ready to go day one, no store to partner with. But we had to keep going. I think we spoke to about 20 stores before we got one that said yes and we started with. Another big challenge for us was delivery, right? So in an on-demand delivery model, it's quite hard it's like a chicken and egg or supply and demand problem. Before you have orders, to have drivers who don't have any business, what are they doing with you? So we started day one with using Uber drivers, right? I remember our first order, I still had a job at the time. I pulled over on the side of Santon Drive because a store messaged me to say they had an order and I had to book an Uber to go to that store, phone the guy and brief him on what to do. So look, there's a lot of the struggles you go through, a lot of ups and downs, but I think you need that underlying why, or you need that belief in what you're doing to ensure that when those struggles come, you will push through them and you'll keep going.
And the interesting thing is those struggles, when they do come, they actually build an even more tolerance for pain. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
For you to become stronger, you got to take punches, which hurts. But the more punches you take, the stronger you become.
And the easier taking those punches becomes. 100%. I remember the setbacks in the beginning, you could be down for a day or two of just being depressed about, oh, have I done the wrong thing? Is my business falling apart? Now we get constant setbacks, but I think your ability to hit back after those is your recovery time is much quicker. You can have a setback and an hour later I'm back on laser focus on what we're wanting to do.
And because you've got that, you can also now instill it in your team. You know, when you're bringing in new people in the business who get like intimidated by certain challenges, they seem minor to you, but you can instill that belief and hope because you've taken the punches yourself. So it almost also helps shape your leadership and how you impart that knowledge on it. But in getting these stores to sign up at the early stages, were you like knocking on doors, cold calling, like literally driving and saying, hey, can I chat to the manager?
We spent many days, myself and Enrico, in a car driving around Joburg with Google Maps, looking at the different stores we had highlighted, walking in the stores, looking at their range, looking at their hours, trying to meet the owners, cold calling stores. And it's something I think every entrepreneur needs to go through in the beginning. No matter what your business is, you're going to spend time where you have to put yourself out there and constantly get 10 no's before you get one yes. And if you're not going to be willing to go through that process of getting the 10 no's, you'll never get the one yes. But it was actually an enjoyable time looking back on it now.
And it's moments that, you know, when you are in an office eventually and it's air conditioned and you got people who are helping you manage the system, you know, you look back on those days and they become an important reflection. They humble you. Because a lot of the time people have this grandiose idea of what it means to be an entrepreneur. They don't understand how you need to rough it out. What bootstrapping means, what like literally counting every single 10 cents and going out there and putting yourself on the line and getting rejected. It's not glamorous at all.
No.
You know, so that perspective, you know, people need to get it up front. Because they have this idea that now I'm going to be rich, I'm going to get orders, I'm going to drive a fancy car, live in a nice apartment. But the reality is when you're starting out, you're out there and you're no one. And no one knows what bottles is. No one has seen a bottles. So I want to know from you, now you're sitting or standing in front of a bottle store owner who has sold alcohol one way for I don't know how many years. And you now have to change behavior. So it's one thing trying to sell me something that is complementary to something I've done before, I've used before. But to convince me to change my behavior is one heap of a task. So how did you put together a proposition that's compelling enough for someone to say, okay, I'm going to give this technology a chance?
Over multiple iterations. This is the thing. Every single bottle store owner we spoke to or investor that we pitched to, every single pitch you're learning from. Every no you get, you're learning from, right? And I think you refine your pitch and your proposal every time, right? So the first few stores we met to, our proposal probably wasn't very compelling. It wasn't very smooth, and it was probably still rough around the edges. But through that, we got feedback from those guys of why are they saying no? What don't they like? What are the questions they have? How do we make it better for the next one? So I think every opportunity to talk about your business and your idea, no matter who it is to, is an opportunity to refine your pitch and hone in what your elevator pitch is. I also think it's about finding the right partners, right? So we met with many stores who ummed and ahed and they weren't sure. And for us, they're not the right partner then. We were looking for partners who believed in what we were doing so that they would take it on with as much enthusiasm as we were, right? If you're finding a business who we're going to partner with who is more old school, isn't very digital savvy, and we're like, oh, maybe, I'm not sure. The reality is they're probably going to look for every negative a few weeks or a few months in, rather than focusing on the positives or focusing on how they can contribute to make it better. So we try to find the right partners in terms of that fit too. Okay.
And the investment piece, you guys secured investment, you guys, you went on Mnet, Shark Tank. How did that come about? Was it like a decision that you guys saw an opportunity? Because I mean, you were early in your startup journey, and here is Shark Tank, where you've got quite experienced investors who have built huge businesses and are not looking to pay school fees, but are looking to make money. What was that experience like, and how did you get to the decision where you're like, you know what, we're going to do this thing, we're going to go on the show?
So before that, we were doing incubators, right? Okay. So we had been to two incubators where you have to present, and there's a bunch of investors who come to it, and you can be chosen for winning certain things and funding, etc. We had done a couple of those which had helped us hone our pitch, but we hadn't been successful in them, to be honest. Okay. And then we heard the opportunity of Shark Tank, and I mean, I'd watched, myself and my partner had both seen Shark Tank overseas, we see Dragon's Den, so we kind of knew the concept. And we also thought it would be a great opportunity to showcase our platform. I think we're lucky in that we have quite a cool brand and a cool business in what we're doing. People enjoy it, people engage with it. So we thought it's the right platform to probably showcase ourselves and get investment at the same time. So yeah, we kind of, I think we'd also, working in corporates, we had to present to many boards and business leadership meetings. Where you're taking a project or an innovation and it's like your business. So we had a lot of experience doing it. We prepared our pitch. It was very nerve-wracking, I won't lie. Being in front of the cameras, knowing this was going to be on national TV and everyone really knew was going to watch this probably.
And you've seen some of the rejection, so you've seen some of the harsh comments from people who go there unprepared, so that could be nerve-wracking as well.
And look, they don't make it easier for you on the show, right? You have 1 3-minute pitch to do. You don't get any retakes on that 3-minute opening pitch.
Sure.
And then what you see on the show like 6 months later is a small edited version. We were in there for an hour getting grilled for questions. They edited down to a very succinct part. And the first 2 investors, we thought we had done a decent pitch and maybe be some interest. The first 2 investors said no. Sure. And then we're sitting there reeling now, how do we win the other 3 over through the questions? But I think we had been through enough presentations to at incubators, to mentors, to friends, to other potential investors before the show, that by the time we got there, our pitch was pretty much well honed. We knew most of the questions people could ask us. We knew our key selling points. We knew our numbers. It's very important as an entrepreneur to always know your numbers. Any investor, if you don't know your numbers, they won't even think about you. So I think we had honed our pitch very well before the show, which meant going on there we could be successful, and I think we were lucky to be successful.
And were you ready to take on investor money? Because it's another internal sort of debate entrepreneurs go through to say, okay, I've built this business, there is a model, it works, all right? Because I think you mentioned on the show, like you were like 5-6 months in, and already you had developed the model, you had over 300K in turnover, over 800 orders, so already there's a viable model, but it's still early days. So how do you get to the decision where you're like, okay, cool, I'm ready to take on investor money. I'm ready to let go of a bit of equity. How do you get to that mindset? Because once you take that money, it's a different ballgame altogether. Yeah.
First, I'm impressed. You remember the numbers from the show better than I probably do.
Well, you said
so know your numbers. You know the numbers. Well done. Look, I think for us, what myself and Enrico had both done is we both had full-time jobs while trying to do bottles on the side.
Sure.
And we got to the point where bottles needed at least one of our full-time focus. And in order to do that, we didn't want to bootstrap further. We ran out of money. We couldn't be supporting this on our own anymore. So we got to the point where investment was needed, where we felt we had proven the model on a small enough scale that with money we could now unlock the potential of our business. So that was a key trigger for us. Going on the show and getting investment there in our first round of investment and funding meant Enrico could leave his full-time job and do bottles full-time.
Okay.
And it was a key moment for us because before that, you can only take a business so far doing it on the side. If it's not going to be your full, and by the way, investors won't even consider, if you're doing a business only on the side, investors aren't going to give you money unless you're going full-time. So for our investment, it was a requirement that one of us would leave our jobs to go full-time into the business. But from there, with getting some money in and having someone full-time in the business, we were able to scale so much faster than we would have waiting any longer.
And what kind of other opportunities that having, because it wasn't just a monetary thing, but it's also like the strategic partnership with the right investors that is able to open up doors for you. So what kind of opportunities did that sort of strategic relationship then open itself up for the business?
So the guys we invested with had built one of the biggest businesses in South Africa and Africa, the Creative Council. They have a lot of connections in the alcohol industry. They have a lot of experience in running businesses. So I think they were able to mentor us and give us access to their networks, right? I think Ran and Gil, who both invested through that deal, are two of the best networkers I've ever met.
Sure.
I think that's where I learned that networking skill and how important it was. And we obviously were able to benefit of that. And I think it is important that you try and take on smart money, not just any money, right? You want investors who are going to help mentor you, help grow you, open access to people, to other businesses, to opportunities that can help you scale your business. And they've done that definitely.
And it's a bit of a serendipity because, at Unilever, I can imagine you were familiar with the Creative Council, because they work a lot with big manufacturers. Well, big manufacturers rely on them for activations and advertising. So, did that also help influence your decision? And coming into that, were you also then able to win them over in your knowledge of their business and having previous experience? Was that part of the
I definitely think so. I think they probably were quite confident in us because they had been exposed to us or seen us through Unilever, and so they kind of figure that we've maybe got some sort of track record that they can buy into, and vice versa. I think we knew that they had a great track record in starting a business and scaling it massively, in marketing, in as you said, working with big companies. So they had great relationships with a lot of the big alcohol manufacturers who now we have great relationships with, and it's important to our business. One of the key ways we make money is not just through our software and the sale of alcohol, but it's through partnering with brands. We're unique in offering alcohol manufacturers a way to connect their marketing directly to their sales, right? You can put a TV ad on and you can say that that's going to drive sales in store, but you can't directly measure what that does. Whereas with our platform, we've got a database of at-home alcohol drinkers. We know who you are, where you stay, what you're drinking, and we can influence your basket, right? So to alcohol manufacturers, that's an opportunity to reach their consumers and directly link it to sales. They opened a lot of those contacts for us too, which was very helpful.
That's amazing. And the piece that you touch on around networking is so crucial. And for me, what's important in networking, if you're going to build relationships, especially with investors or big business, you got to understand what drives their value. Your business, you were able to see the data play and see the connection that your platform can have directly in terms of getting brands to reach consumers. That's a big value that adds for any organization, because today, data is the big game. If the more you know about people, the better you can sell and market to them, right? But to understand that is you got to have this value creation mindset for the people you want to partner with. Is that something that has become now a strategy for you in terms of the relationships you seek to build Because, you know, we throw this word networking around loosely. Like networking is you going into an event, having a drink with someone, exchanging business cards, and that's it. But it's much deeper than that, you know, and I want to find out from you the depth of you building relationships with these big organizations and other partners. You know, how do you go about doing that? And how do you go then finding the value that will build these sustainable relationships?
Look, I think the old school way of networking was always exactly that, right? Going for drinks and exchanging business cards. I think it's in the new age, every person you meet is an opportunity to make a new connection or relationship that may come in value.
Yeah.
So being authentic and being nice and is important to anyone you meet.
Yeah.
And I say that to a big businessman, to anyone you meet on the street. You never know who you're meeting and what influence you could have on their life or they could have on your life.
Yeah.
So I think if you approach life that way, I don't think network's a thing you have to go out necessarily do. In some businesses, sure, that's a thing. I think if you approach your whole life that way, it's amazing the opportunities that people can unlock for you down the line.
Sure.
So that's the way I try to approach it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I like the way you phrase it, because then it doesn't become an isolated skill set that you gotta learn. It's like, no, just be a good person. Just be a genuinely courteous, kind
to
person.
everyone you meet, because you never know, that person could be the decision maker in a meeting that you're going to be in 2 years now for something really important for you.
Yeah.
If you were a good person, a nice person to them, that will affect you in a positive way.
100%.
So try be that with everyone.
With everyone. And then it becomes just a simple culture in your life and in your business, that everyone then is able to treat everyone with the same level of respect. Because the challenge is, a lot of people feel like they have to give different levels of respect to different people. Like, you know, if a girl over there walks into my business, shit, I gotta suit up, and, you know, but if Thabo Moloi comes in, it's Thabo Moloi. But if you have a mindset or a culture to say everyone is either important right now or have the potential to be important in the near future, or is connected to some level of importance, then everyone is treated like with that
and every individual for me deserves respect, regardless of their background, of their career, of what they're doing today or tomorrow. They deserve to be treated with the same level of respect. So it's a philosophy for life more for me than business. But I think it's very helpful in business.
Because another thing is word of mouth spreads, right? Like, if I know that Vince has given a great experience to, you know, me, and I've had a great time chatting to Vince or engaging with his business or brands, well, guess what? I'm going to tell everyone in my community, in my space, in my social media environment, I'm going to let everyone that I meet that this is the type of person Vince is. But on the other side of the coin, if I get a crap experience and something goes haywire, one, it's either, if I don't know Vince personally, I'm going to take that experience of his business as a direct reflection of Vince. All right? So sometimes you as the owner, things happen that are outside of your control. But if people know who you are, then they can forgive you. So it's important that you carry your personal brand with you everywhere you go, and then at least that speaks for you. And in building your business, did you try and put as much of your personal brand in it? Or did you find the business morphing into what it is and then you learning from it?
No, 100%. It was us. I think a business is a reflection of you, and what we wanted in an ideal world to create this amazing place that has such a great culture. It's not as easy to do on paper, right? And so we've tried to put a lot of ourselves and our experience into the business and the culture and the people. We've tried to invest a lot of our time growing our people, but it's not an easy thing to do. And I think it gets the challenge is only harder as you scale, right? It was a lot easier for us when we were only 3 or 4 people to have myself and Enrico and our passion and drive and culture emanate to the whole team. Now when you're 18 people, it's a whole other challenge. It can't just be on the backs of myself and Enrico. We need to inspire that in the next level of leadership in our business. So they're inspiring that in the next level of leadership as you go. So it becomes harder as you scale. It definitely does.
And have you had situations where there's a bit of misalignment, where maybe someone joined the team and there isn't a culture fit? And if you have had those experiences, how have you dealt with them?
It's hard, right? Because I think we've tried to create a culture that's very much one for extroverts. But at the same time, that's not fair on a person who comes into your business who's more of an introvert, but they're really good at their job. So our cultures had to morph as we grow to try and be as inclusive as possible so that we can get the best out of our people. I believe that you spend so much time in your workplace. If you're not happy in your workplace, and you're not always happy in your job, but if you're not happy in the environment of your workplace, you're not going to be giving your best work, and therefore the business is not getting the best out of you either.
Yeah.
It's mutually beneficial for people to be happy in their workplace and the culture, at least, for them to do the most and for the business to get the most out of them. But it hasn't been easy. I think there's been many instances where we haven't got that right. I still think today even we don't always get that right, but we're always trying to improve it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. As long as you're always trying to improve it, you will be getting to the best you can be.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of the time, it's like you're saying, it's much easier when you're smaller, because everybody feels like they're part of something special, all right? But the bigger you get, the more detached people become from the business, and you create this agency sort of problem where it's just a job.
Yeah.
How do you get people to really buy into the business and buy into the vision and feel like they're part of it more than just coming to do a job?
And it's a constant battle myself and Enrico both have, from being very into the day-to-day runnings of our business and the value we get out of that, and versus trying to focus our time more on the bigger picture, the bigger things of scaling our business into the future. I think it's a balance we struggled with. In the early days, we had to be very hands-on ourselves and involved in the business. But I think we spent too much time there to our own detriment, so that we weren't planning enough for the future. And I think we then jumped from that to, okay, we've grown to being a bigger team. We can pull back now and focus on other things. But when we did that, we did it too quickly, and it meant there were balls dropped as a result. So finding that balance is very hard. Yeah. I don't think we still have it today, to be very honest.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is this continuously learning throughout the business, but even learning from other businesses. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of the time finding their education within the business. There's a lot of education you can get from other players, other competitors, other suppliers within your value chain. You know, I always say it's wise to learn from your mistakes, but it's even wiser to learn from other people's mistakes. Yeah. Right? In building your business, are there other businesses or other apps or other entrepreneurs you've tried to look at and see what mistakes they've had and learn from it and try to model your business similarly? Or did you just use your internal gut feel to build your business?
No, definitely. So we started by modeling it on the American alcohol delivery app. So there was two that started there. It was Drizzly and Saucy. Drizzly was the first. They started on the East Coast. Saucy was the second. They started on the West Coast. And they both went into this competitive battle to try and take over the US. So we got a lot of insight from what they were doing, how they set up their business models, and from where they started to where they went to, which gave us a good roadmap of where we wanted to go. As an example, they all started as alcohol delivery apps focusing on 1 hour alcohol delivery to consumers only. But a few years into their business, they were doing scheduled deliveries, not just on demand. They had built e-commerce websites, not just apps, and they started focusing on B2B and offices as additional consumers to go after, not just end consumers as well, right? Which has given us a great roadmap of what we want to do, right? We want to do the same thing. We started as an alcohol delivery app on demand, 1 hour, but we want to soon be adding scheduled deliveries. We want to soon be going after new segments. So that's been great. I think the other segments that we've looked at are the food delivery guys, right? No one does on-demand delivery better than food. Right, Mr. Delivery, Uber Eats, even Order In, have been doing this longer than we have, and a lot of the challenges and operations that we have, they've had already. So we've tried to learn from a lot of what they've been doing too. And I think it's also important in terms of what you read. A great thing that I've been reading lately is called The Hustle. It's a weekly emailer that goes out that talks about different startups and entrepreneurs around the world, mainly focusing on the US and Silicon Valley, but not only there. And it's a weekly newsletter which just gives you insight to all these different startups, what they've been going through, what the key challenges were, raising money, scaling, etc., etc. So I think it is important that you find the right sources of knowledge to read and be well informed on, because there's so much you can learn from what others are doing.
100%. I mean, any great entrepreneur I research on, they spend a lot of the time reading. You know, whether it's like Warren Buffett spending 6 hours a day, like 6 hours a day reading newspapers, books, whatever. Whether it's Bill Gates, who reads about on average 60 books a year. Like, That's a lot of reading, but they are where they are because of the knowledge they were able to consume and apply. So I resonate strongly with that. But like the example you use in the US where, you know, you've got Drizzly, you've got Saucy, you've got all this competition. Now in SA, you guys have launched and there's competition. You know, like I did my own sort of research before this and I was just blown away by all these guys that have popped out of nowhere. How have you responded to that? Is it something that, you know, keeps you up at night? I mean, they always say a little bit of competition is good to keep you on your toes. But how do you respond to competition and how do you ensure that, you know, you consistently try and stay abreast of it?
I think competition is very important. I think as we launched first to market and we had that drive in the beginning, but I think early on we probably became a good bit complacent as a result because no one was doing what we were doing, right? As soon as competition hit us, it lit this fire under us that we need to be doing more and better all the time. So it's definitely got more out of us as more competition has crept up.
But another thing with competition, right, is entrepreneurs can fall into the trap of trying to compete rather than build. So you get into the space where you're seeing competition do cool stuff that you might not have thought of, but now you're like, oh, maybe we should be doing that too. How important is it, yes, to stay flexible and adapt, but at the same time, sort of hone in to your strategy and believe in it to compete more sustainably?
Yeah, so I think competition makes you focus on what are you best at or how are you different to anybody else in the market. And trying to hone in on where your strengths are and what you can win on is important. It's made us think of the same thing, right? We have competition from multiple different segments, from the food guys, from other startups doing exactly what we're doing. So we've had to look at our business model and our brand and say, what are the key things we want to be known for and focus on? Because at the end of the day, and I think we spoke about this earlier, if to be successful as a business, you need to do certain things really, really well and better than others. And I think competitions help us figure that out. Cool, here come competitors, this is what they're focusing on. What do we focus on and what do we want to be the best at versus them? So that consumers will see us, whenever they think of bottles, they will think of these two things or three things. That's what I think competition drives that in you, in a way.
I like that because I like what you mentioned in terms of focusing on where you can be the best, which is counterintuitive, surprisingly, for a lot of business people who feel like they have to be the biggest, where if I'm starting a business, I need to be selling to as many people as possible. And that for me will be an indication of, you know, am I built for this? Can I build a business? Can I succeed? Whereas the reality is, if you can be the best, even if it's on a small scale, then you stand a better chance of competing sustainably and scaling. So building that discipline to say, all right, there's these opportunities. I mean, you could have easily gone the route of partnering with big brands to do activations online, and that could have been your main business. But so many other people are doing that, and you not necessarily can be the best in that. So the focus on being the best, even if it's on a small scale, and then being disciplined enough to stay small while building that core competency before you can grow is just so important, you know? And from you having done that, how do you eliminate these distractions? How do you eliminate all these other voices and these mental fights to say, all right, we're small, nobody knows us, but we're becoming the best?
Look, it's very hard. I think even today with the business that we've got, there are so many offshoots of different ways we can pivot and additional segments of consumers we can go after. I think it's very important having a long-term vision. Right? It's something that we developed very early on. It's something that we constantly look at and evolve as we grow. And something that we always have to look back on when we're taking big jumps in our business. You have to say, is this going to help me drive us towards that vision? If it's not, it's a distraction, right? That's very important. I think we've had that many times. I'll give you an example. We have an on-demand business in alcohol. There's an opportunity for us to launch different segments of on-demand outside of alcohol. We could go after pharmacy on-demand delivery, pet and baby on-demand delivery. There's plenty segments that we have that we could go after, but we've decided that our vision and focus is alcohol. We've built a business in alcohol. We know alcohol very well from a consumer perspective, from a product perspective. We've learned the industry really well, so we want to make that our thing. So our vision is focused around being the Drizzly, I would say, of Africa, right?
Yeah.
Being the name in alcohol e-commerce in Africa, which means when an opportunity comes up to do something in a different segment, that's not driving towards our vision.
Yeah.
So you always have to bring it back to what is your long-term vision of what you're going to do. If the idea or new offshoot is not driving you towards that, it's a distraction and you mustn't do it.
No, that's amazing. And, I look at the Bottles brand, and you're right, like it's a very cool brand. I use the app itself, very easy to use, the interface is simple, but the brand itself, like it's crisp and it speaks to you without saying a lot. And it's a cool brand. Like you when you speak about Bottles or you go on the app and you show people, everybody's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I can imagine to build a cool brand isn't easy. People think that branding is something that, you just stick a logo on something and boom, you got a brand. But there's more to it. And in your experience, I don't know what, you spent 8 years building brands and big corporates for big brands. What kind of insights can you share in terms of what it takes to build a brand, whether it's a cool brand that's a reflection of you, or whether you're in a business working for a corporate? What kind of, insights, knowledge, experience can you give of what people can do just to build brands that resonate?
I mean, you've always got to start with a consumer insight or a consumer need that your brand is answering, right? I think that's really, really important. I think from there you need to build a personality around your brand, right? Try to think of if your brand was a pair of sneakers, what sneakers would there be? If your brand was a car, what car would there be? Defining your brand on multiple different dimensions is important. I think again, working in big companies, we were exposed to the tools and structures and procedures they had in place for building brands and managing brands. So something like a brand key, which starts with what's your brand essence, who's your target audience, and making sure you're quite clear on who your target audience is. What are your reasons to believe? Why should people believe in what your brand is offering? Defining all of that up front, I think, is very, very important, so that everything you do, every piece of communication or branding that you do talks back to that. Being very consistent, again, is key, right? You don't want to constantly be all over the show with who your brand is and what it's about. So we've tried to take some of the skills. Look, I don't think we've got it all right. There's still a long way to go. Sure. And I also think there's a lot of room in the early days for entrepreneurs to not get it right. Right? Before a lot of people know you, just get something out there and learn from your consumers. I think that's another very, very important thing. We had an idea of our minds of what we wanted Bottles to be, but then we had to see who's actually using Bottles, right? And we found that the consumer using it is slightly different to the idea of the consumer using it we had. So we have had to adapt our brand based on feedback from our consumers. I think in a digital age, we have an unrivaled opportunity to get feedback from people in the moment. You don't need to launch something and spend millions of rands on a big above-the-line campaigns to get awareness. You can take a couple $100 and put something out on digital platforms and get feedback from consumers and have them help you build your brand.
Sure.
It's something I think we've done and we still are doing.
Oh, that's powerful. All right, lastly, I mean, there are a lot of people who are watching this right now who might be aspiring entrepreneurs or guys who are running their own business, have started the entrepreneurial journey and are looking to grow. Or maybe it's career professionals, guys who are aspiring to become brand managers, they're aspiring to work on big brands and do cool stuff with brands. Whatever it is, any words of wisdom that you live by, that you can share. Stuff that wakes you up in the morning, that keeps you going when the going gets tough, and any words of wisdom that you can just advise people who are on this journey to really keep going.
Sure. It's a wide brief. I think, look, I remember when I was in university, someone said to me, and we were doing a business science degree, and they said there's two types of people in this room. There are those that are smart and lazy, and there's those who are smart and diligent. The smart and lazy people won't last. Sure. So I think no matter how smart you are, you need to be able to work hard. It's a simple thing, but I definitely think it's a reality. I think tenacity is very, very important. Believe in what you're doing and don't ever give up on it. You've got to constantly be pushing through different walls, which is important. And having some level of why. Like in a business, you want to have a vision of what you're working to. Have a vision for yourself, right? At least figure out what are the key pillars of the career that you're wanting to build are. Is it, if you're in a marketing business, is it digital? Do you want to be a digital expert or a digital marketing expert? Are you wanting on focusing, do you want to focus on the youth or on fixing certain problems? I think in my career, I always try to look back on what are the key pillars that I want to be successful on. And that helped me to make decisions that were always moving me towards that. So I think that's quite important too.
Yeah.
And finally, I think being self-aware. I think that's the most important thing. The more self-aware you are of yourself and those around you, the more you can learn and improve yourself. Everybody, we can always learn. 100%. There's always more we can do and know about ourselves, about our business, about the people around us. And approaching everything with an open mindset to learn, to improve oneself is important.
Wow, that's amazing, amazing. Vince, thank you so much. I've sat here and just been impacted. Like iron sharpens iron, and it's so important to surround yourself with people who are helping you build and grow. So, watching you and being an aspiring entrepreneur and the way you've connected and leveraged those connections is just all inspiring, man. So wish you all the best. Guys, can't tell you just how important it is to make sure that you connect yourself with people who are ahead of where you are so that you can have someone to look up to, but reach out to those people so they can take you along on the journey. So we've been tremendously blessed. This is a guy that is walking the journey, that has walked the journey and is doing amazingly well. Still early days, so there's a lot more to come. So it's one of the guys you're gonna want to pay close attention to. Bottles app, the alcohol delivery app, is an app that make sure that you download. I'll leave a description and a link below to the business, so make sure that you get it. It's on Android, it's on Apple as well, the iStore, so make sure that you get the app and just be responsible with your drinking, but it's hella convenient as well. But more importantly, thank you so much for watching this. I hope that you've been impacted just as much as I have. Make sure that you switch on if you're offline, and like I keep trying to tell you, I promise you, it's gonna be a movie. One love.